How's it going, folks? Let me know if you can hear me okay. Welcome to episode 14 of the Carbide Office Hours series. Today, I have a really simple problem. I have a bunch of dongles, SD cards that I don't really know what to do with. They've just been cluttering my desk. So I figured I have a CNC. Let's solve that problem. Um, Hope everyone is doing well. Chat is kind of empty right now, but I see we're filling up. So, all right, got confirmation. Sound is good. I'm streaming on my new laptop in the new studio. I say studio. This is really just an empty room that they threw me in. So hopefully over time, maybe we can fill up that wall and just come up with projects to sort of decorate this place because it's kind of barren right now. Let me give you guys a really quick tour. Um, so this is just an empty room that they gave me. I've got some lights set up. I have a hand-me-down little tool cart that is currently empty. I got the little Nomad set up here, and it's just me. I have a window into the shop, so uh, I if I appear startled, it's likely because someone threw something at that window to get my attention or just to mess with me. So even though I'm up in this room, I am not immune to coworker shenanigans. So, um, happy Friday, everyone. Hello, London, representing the UK. All right, so let's get started. I will admit I am completely winging this because it's been a really busy week. So let me run you guys through what I'm thinking, and then you guys can give me some input of your own in terms of how you would design this. So I'm going to cut to the Nomad view just because it's something I can do a close-up of easily, and then we can start talking about just different ways to attack this problem. So I'm going to be upfront. This is going to be a pretty simple project in terms of like CNC skills. I'm going to be using Carbide Create because basically what I'm doing is I need some way to hold these and then also hold these cards. And while I'm at it, my little solid state external hard drive. So I came up with a little sketch. This is going to be super overexposed. I'm going to block the light with my hand. So that's what I'm thinking. Little hard drive holder goes there. It's got some dongles. That'll go in here. These holes will be sized for USB-C ports, and then maybe some SD card slots. So I'm going to take some measurements, and then we can go ahead and figure out how large this piece needs to be. I have some plywood, some scrap, that I'm going to machine everything from. This is just 5-ply hardwood from the big box store, and we'll go from there. So I looked at a couple different designs online. Let me switch back to my desktop. So I was trying to get some design inspiration from the internet. Because I've seen a lot of SD card holders, some that are fun. Like there's one where the SD cards are like the spines of a stegosaurus, and there's a lot of ways you could go about this. Some interesting ones here. You can 3D print them, but I'm looking for something just a little simpler that I can do at my desk right now in the scope of a live stream. So I'm gonna try and replicate something fairly close to this, and we'll see how far we get. If you guys have any ideas of your own in terms of how to organize this or what to do, I really like this one. Just it's sized for like a full-size USB-A port, but we're not going to do that. We're going to do USB-C because USB-C is the bane of my existence, but I also love it, which is why I want to make this work. So I'm going to take some really quick measurements just to figure out what I'm working with. Should I use an... let's take a vote. Should I work in metric or imperial? Actually, that's a really terrible suggestion because I'm going to really favor imperial. I'm going to start in imperial for now, but if I get outvoted in the comments, we will do some quick conversion. So USB-C port measuring just under 0.1 inches. Doesn't look like it's a nice metric equivalent, so I, I gotta imagine it was designed for metric. Anyway, I'm gonna say the width of this is 0.1 inches, and or the thickness of it, and the width will be 0.325. Works for me. Let me zoom out a little bit so you're not just focused in on my hands, and that looks roughly focused. The camera quality is a little blurry. Um, 4 votes from metric. All right, fine. We'll do metric. The internet has spoken. So let's call that 8.25 millimeters, and I'm gonna say 2.5. So 8.25. I'm sure there's an online spec you can find for like the USB specification. I can't be bothered. So I think what I'm going to do is just capture the connector portion. There's another little area here, but I have 2 different types of USB-C dongles that just lay around in my office, and they're sized slightly differently. So I'm only going to worry about capturing the metal portion of this connector. And that looks like a continuous radius around, so I can just do a slot to capture that. Well, let's take a look at the SD card. 2.25 millimeters-ish, and all right, 24 millimeters dead. So that's going to pose a little bit of an issue. I think that was 2.25. 24 millimeters across. Now that is for a rectangular slot, but we can't mill that. Let me turn down the lights. You can't see that at all. Okay. So a rectangular slot, 24 millimeters across, 2.25 tall. We can't machine square corners, so we're going to have to round out these ends and accommodate the SD card within the straight portion of it, and just overshoot a little bit. So there will be a little bit of lateral wiggle room for this SD card. Not the end of the world. This is just a desk organizer. It's not going into space. So that's the SD card. Let's measure the hard drive. And roughly 10.5. We're going to have to oversize that a little bit. And then 57.5. Oh, fantastic. Someone pulled up the spec. 8.4 millimeters nominal and 2.6 millimeters wide for the USB-C connector. All of these dimensions are going to have to be oversized anyway, just because there's a little bit of backlash in any CNC, and there's also compliance in wood. So as you're cutting this, as your cutter pushes into it, it's the wood fibers themselves actually have a little bit of spring back. So you might cut a square that's 1 by 1 inches, but after your cutter passes through, it's going to be like 0.99 whatever. So all of these have to be oversized. We're going to play around with this, and it might turn out that I screwed up on the first try, so I have to go in, make a second cut. All that, we'll see what happens. We're doing it live. All right, so let me go into Carbide Create. Let me switch to my desktop view. All right, and all right, so first things first, since we're starting a new project, I gotta figure out what my stock size is, canvas size. It really doesn't matter. This doesn't limit how big an area you can cut, but if it's larger than you need it to be, you've just got a bunch of real estate wasted. So I'm going to say this will be, I'm looking at my drawing again, no more than 3 by 5 inches. In reality, it's probably going to be a bit smaller once I start moving things around, but we'll just play around with it, see what happens. Stock thickness is 0.5 inches, and I want a 0 at the bottom because half-inch plywood is never half an inch. So if I 0 off on the top, there's a chance I will go too far into my wasteboard and machine that, which isn't the end of the world. I just hate hitting the double-sided tape that I'm going to be using. And then toolpath 0, lower left, great. Material will be hardwood. Machine is a Nomad. I'm actually using sort of a legacy older Nomad, so I don't have the upgraded motor. So I think this is a 50-watt brushless. So it's going to be, it'll be a slow machining operation for sure. Grid spacing, 1/4 inch, sounds good to me. And let's start drawing. Oh, I regret everything right now because I forgot to bring a mouse to the studio. So I'm doing all of this on a trackpad. Realizing that I can't like just click and drag stuff is suddenly, I feel very vulnerable. Let's see how the chat's doing. All right, so far so good. I appreciate that joke, Clint. Let's see. So I'm gonna just draw out everything I have here. Let me actually see if I can, yeah. So I want to make a bunch of placeholders for the things I need to accommodate. So first rectangle, that is going to be for the hard drive. And oh wait, I forgot really important thing. I need to switch all this to metric. So units, millimeters. Guys, you aren't keeping me real. Width, let's go to 75 millimeters, and height, let's go 125. These numbers are so nice. 12.7, I know it's undersized, so I'll actually do 12.5. And then retract height. I like to play it pretty dangerous, so let's go 2 millimeter retract height. And so for this rectangle, we've got a width of 10.5. And I'm trying to think how much extra margin do I want to give. 0.2 would still be a pretty snug fit. So I think I might go 10.8 or 10.9. Let's split the difference, 10.85. Height, 57.5 was the nominal. Let's round that up to 57.9. Well, let's go 58. 58 seems solid. And the corners, we want them to be filleted with a radius that is half of our width. So 5.425. 5.42 will be plenty. Let's apply that, see how it looks. Yeah, that looks pretty much like the profile that we're looking for. All right, so I'm going to move that, I'm going to unselect that. I'm going to work on an SD card model. And oh my goodness, my coworkers are delightful. They just brought me a mouse. I wish you could see the delight on my face right now. You can actually. Lifesaver over here. Sometimes coworkers are fantastic. Let me get this plugged in. Oh, that's so much better. Okay, I'm a happy camper. So rectangle for the SD card. This is going to be 24 millimeters across, 2.25 tall, let's go 2.5 for just a little extra margin. And then 24 wide, let's go 24, let's go a solid 25 because the ends are going to be filleted and the radius of that fillet is going to be 1.25 millimeters. Let's apply that, see how that looks. Looks roughly as skinny as a SD card is. I definitely did just complain about coworker shenanigans, and like I said, sometimes they're actually fantastic people. Um, and then USB-C slots. So this is going to be another rounded feature. Let's make another rectangle, and let's make the, so I think someone pointed out the spec was 8.4, but I'm going to rotate this, so the height will be 8.4 plus a margin of, let's say, 0.3, so 8.7, and then 2.5-ish wide, 2.5. Apply that. We need to fillet the edges. Radius will be 1.25. Apply. Cool. All right, so I need to make 4 of these, 4 SD card slots, just because I thought that would be a nice number. So I'm going to select my first feature, and I'm just going to do Control C. There's no need for Control C, Control V in Carbide Create. Just as soon as you hit Control C, it duplicates it. You can do it several times. So to align these features, we can, let's see, I'm going to snap them to the grid. And before I do that, let me check my document background. I don't think I changed this. Spacing is 6 millimeters. I need to really quickly measure how thick these dongles are because I can't space them too closely together. So the fatter of the 2 dongles is just under 8.5 millimeters thick. So I'm going to do a spacing of, let's say, 10 millimeters might be a little close. Let's give it a little room to breathe. Let's do 15. So I want my grid spacing to be in increments of 5. I think that's a little nicer. And so I'm going to pick one of these. Let me get out of my settings. And I'm going to use the transform feature. And I'm going to just snap the center point of this to one of my grids. I'm going to do that for all of them. So that's 5, that's 10, and that's 15. And then this one, we will snap. I have to figure out how wide these things are. So the radius won't cause an interference on the SD card if you just make it oversized in one dimension. So I should be making it a little wider than it actually is. My dongles are 16 millimeters wide, so I need to space these at least 20 apart. 5, 10, 15, 20. So that is an array of USB-C dongles. I'm going to group these. Which one's the group function? Group selection. So now I can just move these all together, and I'll use that to sort of organize how big this overall thing will be. All right, SD card slot time. I'm going to copy, paste, Control C. I just missed that. I'm used to using a Mac. All right, so we got 4 of those. I'm going to align via the bottom midpoint, just somewhere, so I can get these all consistent. So I'm doing a 10 millimeter spacing. It's probably quite generous, but I do have a lot of vertical real estate to burn because of how long my SSD is. Okay. Let me just double check that. I should probably make this a little bit wider. I'm 1.5, so that's a 16th of an inch wider. With the radius that, let's be safe. Let's go 26 wide on all of these. I can't resize all of them, otherwise I think it'll just stretch it out and make this radius oval. So I'm just going to modify 26 there, 26 here, and repeat that for all of them. All right, we haven't altered the position of anything. I'm going to group these, and then I need to figure out how I'm going to, so just for symmetry, I kind of want to center this with the SD cards, and I think what I can do is a line horizontal. So it'll bring the centers in line, and I might want to spread these apart just a little bit more. So I will separate these again, and I'm going to move that up. What I said, I needed at least 16 millimeters, I think. So between them, so that's about 8. That should fit nicely. All right, so I'm actually going to group all of these together. And then we have this. So let me drag these around, figure out a good arrangement for them. That looks roughly right. Let's draw a bounding rectangle to encompass everything. And we'll see how big this thing will actually be. I'm going to drag the lower left corner. And let's see. There's a little more margin on the right side than the left side. So let's bring this in, make the width maybe 55. Maybe that might be a little too aggressive, 57. Let's apply that and bring that corner back to the origin. That looks pretty close. I'll take it. And then it's a little too tall. So let me try playing around with the scaling feature. We're just under 10 millimeters from the bottom. Should leave a little more there. I'm going to turn off snapping so I can just drag this up, see where it ends up. So I'm going to just round this off to 93 millimeters. Is that too much? That looks like too much. Let's rescale that. I'm going to be a little compulsive here. 91, 91.5. So the margins top to bottom seem relatively even. So let's go with that. All right. Actually, no. Let's make this a little classier. Let's. Oh, actually, because I scaled it, I broke the data object for this rectangle. So it's just pure vectors now. It doesn't recognize features like having a fillet or a radius. I can't just add a radius to this now. So I'm just going to keep in mind the width and the height. So 57.5, 91.5. I'm going to delete this, make a new rectangle. Nope, it was 56. And 91.5. And then lower left corner, I'm going to turn snapping back on. Lower left corner to the origin, let's add a fillet. Fillet or chamfer? I'm thinking just everything is round. Let's do a fillet. Radius of 5 millimeters. Apply that. All right, so this will be my desk organizer. And I am doing 1/2-inch plywood for this. So let's machine out these slots. Now these are fairly thin. These are too small for an 1/8-inch end mill to reach. So I'm going to use a 1/16-inch end mill. So for all of these, our 112 16th-inch end mill will cut up to a 1/4 inch deep. That's just how long the flutes are. So I'm going to select the USB-C and SD card features. Select contour, change tool to the Nomad spec hardwood 112. That's a little under 1 millimeter per pass. This might take a while. We can always just switch to the comments and chat there while this machines. Again, keeping in mind that this is a more senior Nomad without the upgraded motor, not to be confused with the upcoming Nomad that we're currently working on. So I'm going to keep these settings. This is throwing me off because I'm used to doing my cam in imperial units. Max depth of a 1/4 inch, so 6.35 millimeters. This will be a pocketing operation, even though I don't think it matters because they're so narrow. And this will be called small features. All right, and then for the SSD, I'm going to, hold on, does that look centered? 3, it's close enough. Actually, I think I can, Sorry, this visually, we have to get this right, otherwise I will never use this organizer. Let's do vertical align. There we go. Now these are perfectly centered to each other. So for this pocket, I think we can afford to switch to an 1/8 inch end mill. So change tools, sort by Nomad, hardwood, end mill. I'm going to use the 102, even though I'm going to use a different end mill, but it's still 1/8 inch, so it should work just the same. And then I want this to be a pocketing operation. We'll call this the SSD cavity. And max depth, just to save time, I don't think I'm going to go further than 8 millimeters. That seems fine. So in theory, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, that's actually not as bad as I feared. We'll see, depending on how this goes. I haven't used one of these older Nomads since 2018, earlier. I don't know, it's been a long time. And then last thing we need to do is cut around this. So contour, still using the 1/8 inch end mill, keep the same speeds and feeds. What is that depth per pass? That depth per pass works out to just over, I think that's 0.035 inches. That should be fine, especially with the down cutting end mill. Those tend to be quite stable. So we'll call this the cutout operation. We want this to cut outside the part, and we want to cut all the way through the part. All right, so we're looking at about 15 minutes with tool changes. Do you make a finishing pass for the SSD hole with a smaller bit, or is it not worth it in wood? So there's not exactly like a finishing pass that you can do in Carbide Create because you can't specify stock to leave. Normally, if I were doing a cutout and I wanted to finish it, I would force this cutout to be a little further away from my part on the first time, and then the second time it comes in, it'll just kiss the surface. So the easiest way to do like a quote-unquote finishing pass is to just duplicate the tool and just run it a second time. You don't need to do such small step downs because there's much less material there. So you can, for a pocket, just go full depth on that, or for a contour, just 1 or 2 step downs. If I were using clamps, I would use tabs, but since I'm going to be using double-sided tape, and hopefully I place the tape in the correct location, I don't think I'll need tabs, so we'll see what happens. All right, so I'm going to hit OK on that toolpath. I am going to save my G-code, desktop, dongles, suck.nc. This is the first time I've run Carbide Create on this program, so I'm going to pick the Carbide 3D Nomad post-processor in, of course, metric. It really doesn't matter. Spoiler alert, both the Carbide 3D Shapeoko and Nomad post-processors are basically the same. Gerbil doesn't export certain things like when you retract at the end, it doesn't go to G, or is it 53 or something? Like whatever the safe plane is that's established when a machine has homing enabled. So if you're not using a Shapeoko, but you are using a Gerbil-based CNC machine and you want to use Carbide Create, select that post-processor. I'm going to use the Nomad Pro post-processor. And let's see if this exported. I will just use Notepad to view my G-code. Looks like everything's there. I haven't actually taken a look at it. So let's open up Carbide Motion. So full disclaimer, I have not actually run this in a very long time. So I don't know if this Nomad actually works or not. So we're going to find out. Let's cut to the Nomad view. Let's clear the work area. Let me power cycle this. I think that's a 16th inch end mill. And all right, so I need to set up my stock. I'm using some 1/2 inch plywood. This looks like definitely the ugly side, so we'll put this side down. I'm using some double-sided tape, which I am guilty of using all too often because it's easy, but this isn't my Nomad. I don't have it set up with my threaded inserts, so this is the only option. It's quick and dirty. So when I flip this over, I want to machine out about here-ish, so I want to put the tape on this corner. I have screwed that up before and put tape on the wrong side of the part, and then I have to just flip it over, and I have to like eyeball a zero somewhere over here so that it cuts here. Yeah, don't do that. And then I should probably put a little piece just somewhere else to keep the rest of the stock from flying around when I finish cutting through this. Let me check on the chat while I'm at this to see how things are going. Right, nothing pressing at the moment. Some people seem to really think that double-sided tape is the devil. They think that using masking tape and then CA glue and then pressing them together and then waiting for it to dry is more convenient. I don't see the big deal. Like, sure, it's taken me a couple tries to pick at the corner of this, but it's still faster than applying 2 layers of tape, one here, applying glue, applying pressure, maybe using activator, waiting for it to set. It's not so bad. Just maybe don't do this the day that you cut your nails. Right about there sounds good. 1, 2, 3, just to make sure it's fully adhered. I'm using the Monotool 46200-K. So this is a 1/4" shank, 1/8" down cutting end mill. Down cuts are fantastic for plywood and MDF. Let me pull out my 1/4" collet. And get this loaded up. You want to make sure you never cross-thread that collet nut, otherwise bad things will happen and you can permanently screw up the spindle. These 1/4" collets are a little tricky because sometimes if you push on them and they're tight on the shank, they'll actually push up into the taper and just basically auto-tighten as you install the end mill. Where's my wrenches? Get that as tight as it'll go. And I've got grease, oil. I need like a napkin. No one's gonna walk with that up to my my office though. Let's MDF, sacrificial. Cool. So let me connect to the machine. And then I think something's up with this machine. It's being super unresponsive. Let me power cycle this again. Hopefully this doesn't give up on me in the middle of a cut, because that would be catastrophic. I'm going to drag my screen just in view. You can see I'm having a little difficulty. This might be an older board. This was also a machine in storage, and I don't know the state of it before I did this. So we may or may not actually be able to cut. But I'm going to disconnect, power cycle the machine. I'm going to reopen Carbide Motion as well. Two, three, try connecting, try initializing. I might need to plug this directly into my computer because I'm plugging it in through my monitor right now. So the mouse is going to have to go. I'm running out of room. That's fine. All right, connected directly. Let's try connecting to cutter again. And okay. Looks like we will continue to be plagued by issues. So I'm going to keep working on this, but if you guys have any other questions that we can use to fill this time, happy to answer anything you have. Yeah, definitely. 2020 Nomad will be fantastic. Um, Hopefully, we can drop some solid news about that in July. So keep your eyes peeled. I'm working on a little bit of content to trickle out to you guys. It should be a lot of fun. Um, all right, so it looks like this Nomad is being extremely uncooperative. Um, I should probably actually test out these machines before I pull them out of cold storage. Um, so throw some questions at me. We can stick around for a little bit. It's just past 2, so we got plenty of time. Um, Let me think. Are there any questions that people have asked me recently? Someone asked me intent when you pick tools. How do you choose the right one? So I've got the whole carbide lineup here. I think we might have touched on this topic before, but sometimes people, they're not sure which tool is appropriate. So we've got 1/8 inch, 16th inch, 32nd inch, 1/4 inch. First criteria is usually what is the size of the feature you're trying to cut? So as before, I was trying to build SD card slots, and those are less than 3 millimeters, so less than 1/8 of an inch. So for that, I have to use a 16th inch end mill. Also, I'm an idiot because the first toolpath I was supposed to use was a 16th inch end mill. So it's a good thing we didn't start cutting. I should be using the 112. Um, what is the Nomad especially good at compared to the Shapeoko 3? Um, so Shapeoko, stick a router here. Um, you have a really zippy belt drive, which isn't geared down. So a lead screw here is 200 steps per millimeter. So the stepper motor is moving in 200 increments to get this carriage to move 1 millimeter. The Shapeoko's belt ratio is 40 steps per millimeter. So this has 5 times the resolution of a belt drive. So this can move much more precisely. The spindle uses high quality bearings, so this spins with almost no run out. So if you're doing PCB milling with a really fine tipped engraver, if you're using really small tools like 1/32 inch or smaller, um, if you stick it in a router, there's a chance that the run out of that router will break the tip of the tool. In wood and plastics, it's not that big a deal. If you're engraving aluminum, that can make a really big difference, or engraving copper traces. So for high precision tasks with small tools, the Nomad is much better for that. Um, let's see. So in terms of this, why I chose stock bottom instead of the top of the stock, this plywood is, if I recall from memory, 0.47-ish, 472, 475 inches thick. And so if I just plug in that my project is 1/2 an inch thick in Carbide Create, and I zero off the top, I'm going to go into my wasteboard by 0.28 inches, or 0.028 inches. Not the end of the world, but it's also not accounting for the tape, which can be about 8 thou or 0.2 millimeters thick. So by zeroing off this face, and then if like normally you'd use a piece of paper to sort of wiggle around to feel when the end mill makes contact with that, if you say fold this up to simulate the thickness of the tape you're using, and you touch off on that, you can cut through your material to the point where it will just graze the double-sided tape, but not cut through the tape, but still cut through your material. So that is why I like zeroing off the bottom. It gets you a super precise cut, and if this is a little undersized, you don't overcut the material. In a wasteboard like this, doesn't matter. If you have threaded inserts that are just under the surface of the wood, you probably don't want to run into that. Am I aware of a bug in Carbide Create where if you choose to move an object and move it around with a right mouse button, that it doesn't release the move from the mouse? Move an object, move around. I will try it out. If you can get this on video and you can record it and share it on the forum or send a message to support, that would really help. I think we're about to do another round of bug fixes and revisions for Carbide Create. So if you can send that in, that would really help our programmer as he goes to address any lingering issues in Carbide Create and Carbide in Motion. Any pointers on engraving small text? Let's see. Tend to run into depth variety, assuming due to not surfacing the face first, but if I surface the face, I have a hard time standing at the tooling marks. So on any machine, you get the best results possible if you surface or machine level the wasteboard or whatever table that you're putting material on. So if this MDF isn't perfectly flat, which on the Nomad it's pretty good, but no material is perfect. So if you take a surfacing bit and you just take this down, that'll guarantee that this face is parallel to your machine axes. And then you put material down on top of that. If you measure with calipers at a bunch of different points and you ascertain that your material itself has a very consistent thickness, then you're probably good to go. If you have some surface variations, like if you have a really crappy plywood, you might want to also surface this. And then once you engrave it, I would suggest making sure that, assuming that it's the top surface and it's not like recessed in like a pocket that you're engraving into, make sure you take an engraving bit like the 501. You're not going to see this, but let's see if I can focus on that. Take a really sharp tool like that, and then engrave your text deep enough such that you can come back with sandpaper and just sand everything down. So making sure you have enough margin to be able to finish your top surface however you want it without erasing the work that you just did with the engraver. That's probably your best bet if you have uneven surface textures. The trickiest part with these is if you're doing a PCB, definitely surface what you're sticking the PCB to, and make sure that when you're applying tape to the bottom of the PCB, let's pretend this is a copper board blank, that you don't just apply tape to the middle, you apply in all four corners so that it's elevated evenly across its entire area. Otherwise, like if I just put tape in the middle and I apply pressure, one side might actually be lower than the other, and PCBs are extremely sensitive to height variations. So even evenly applied tape, make sure like you don't like fold a corner and it's like one corner is taller than the other by like a thickness of your tape, because that will actually throw it off. All right, let's see. All right, we're gonna give this one more try. We're actually gonna yank the power from this machine. And this will be our Hail Mary attempt. If that doesn't work, well, we'll just have to come back a different week and try this out. Or I'll just share the results on Instagram, because in my office, which is on the other side of this building, I've got my old Nomad, which I know works. And so it doesn't look like we can initialize. We'll probably have this board replaced. Actually, I've got a different Nomad lined up that we can use next time. So I guess we barely made it to 2:15. So I'll stick around in the chat while I just clean up here, and I'll just keep trying, because you know the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different result. I'm going to do that for a couple times more, but thank you all for joining. I will share updates for how this organizer turns out, just because between my Mac and my PC and the transition to USB-C, I have a lot of these dongles hanging around. So I definitely need one. So thank you all for joining us for this somewhat eventful Carbide Office Hours episode. And stay safe, keep making, and let us know what you're making. Share it on social media, tag us. We're happy to see what you guys are doing. So take care, folks, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. The first live stream of each month is going to be a Q&A, so bring even more questions about things you're doing or questions you have, and we'll try and address them then. So thanks for coming, guys, and we'll see you next time.